Hello, we want to welcome you to the Riverside Weekly. We hope your time with us today is thought-provoking, spiritually challenging, and a life-changing experience. Our discussions and messages can be raw, real, and at times very uncomfortable and even controversial. We highly encourage all of our guests and listeners to take notes, leave comments, and when possible, always share what you hear. And now here are your hosts, Pastor Cello and Pastor Mia.
When he gets quiet, we'll start. We should. That's what I'm saying. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I've got a guest. Tell us your name.
Valarie Smith.
Name, date of birth, social security card. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we can't go that far.
Yeah.
I'm married to John Smith, after all.
Aliases, by the way, just in case you didn't
Totally.
know. And where are you guys from?
Well, originally, I grew up in the south side of Chicago,
Southside. Just kidding.
but I've been in Tucson, Arizona for about 19 years now.
Wow. So these are my Tucson peeps, in case you didn't know. And got quite a few Tucson peeps. Shout out to the Tucson peeps.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Mira. Just kidding. But anyway, so I brought you on the show today because I had a topic, and I've been telling everybody I get a topic and I put a name to it. And I feel like there's just something that I think you said that just has been resonating in my brain. And I was like, we need to talk about this because it's really important. But being a mom of many, or a mom to many, I have adopted kids, and you have too.
Yes, yeah. We just recently adopted our second daughter.
Yay!
That finalized in July.
Yay!
Yeah.
So now you have a total of
3 kids.
3 kids, okay? And you have, out of those 3, 1 is adopted.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
So how's the adoption life?
It's going good. No, it really is. It's just an interesting dynamic because when you bring someone into your family that wasn't raised in the culture of your family, there's a learning curve.
That's about right. I thought that we could relate to each other, but because I've adopted so many, and but 3, 1 legally, and then the other 2 just kind of came under my wing, and everybody is like, "Oh no, you've adopted way more than that," because they've all lived in the blue house. So which is the case. I've had some, but none legally as adopted as you have done. And I was thinking about this the other day when I had you in mind. I was like, man, you know what? I remember being a young kid and saying, I'm never going to have kids. I'm just going to adopt. And then after I had my first son, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to ever adopt. And then it ended up happening. So Tell me how you got into that situation, and how is family life now, before and after?
Okay, so before, family of 4, son and daughter, and,
The perfect family?
things were good. Things were good. And things are good now. But it was just that transition. So our adopted daughter came to us as a foster because the family that she was staying with, they were coming to our church, but they were transitioning out of foster care. And she was 15 at the time. We knew what happened to 15-year-olds in the system. They're not going to look for another family to place her with. So, our hearts were moved with compassion. We didn't want her to get lost in the system and go to a group home and all of that. And, we had loved her. She was part of our youth group. So
same story.
Yeah. So we opened up our home, and we became her fictive kinship family. We were her fake family.
Oh.
And then, went through that process and became an official foster family for her, which was great. And then it was shortly after that the court started moving towards that place of severance. And that meant they're looking for permanent placement. And she had a choice. You know, she could go live in a group home, or she could stay with us, or she could go out on her own. She was almost 16.
Ouch.
And they would do kind of like supportive independent living. But she decided to stay. She wanted to be adopted, so we moved forward with that adoption. But in that process, you know, our son graduated and he went away to school. And so there was just a lot of different dynamics going on in the household. And the surprise, the thing that we weren't quite prepared for, was our daughter identified a place of grief that she was going through. And we all were, because Cannon had moved out.
Yeah.
And we realized, like, family as we knew it has completely changed.
Yeah.
And even though all of what was going on was really a positive thing, it was a very good thing, there was still an undercurrent of grief that we actually had to address and go through that grieving process in order to be healed, so we could then form as a family.
So was that a long process? Like because your family dynamics changing and rearranging and everybody talking about it. Most families don't do that. They don't talk about things like that. They're just like, you know, shove it under the rug. We're just going to, you know, step right over the poop on the floor and we're going to move on.
Right.
You know, I mean, but then it stinks or, you know, whatever. So what brings you to the place of, let's talk about it. Let's all sit down. Let's talk about it, or let's work through it. How?
Right. So for us, it really was that place of identifying it, and then having conversations, not forced conversations, but just as things came up. And if it was brought to the table, then let's talk about it. And if it's just, you know, one of my daughters and me, and it comes up in conversation, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything that we felt like we needed to attack or address and just, you know, let's
so
force our way
organic.
through it. It was very organic.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
And, you know, so we walked through that process, and I really feel like the turning point for us was probably not too long ago, like maybe just a couple months ago, that we kind of hit a turning point. And we're still in the process, because I think the first pivotal point was the actual adoption. Because it made everything final. So with everything being finalized, then, okay, we've got to come to a place of acceptance and say, this is what our family's going to look like. And how do we build? How do we move forward from this point?
Wow. And here comes my ghetto-ness and my Mexican. It's going to come out, because all I thought about was jeans. You know, when you're in a Mexican family, you say, I'm going to cut them. I'm going to turn them into shorts. Once I cut them, I can't cut back. I'm going to cut it. And that's what I thought. You know, once you accept them and you adopt, there's no, I can't give you back. I've already, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you just made me think of that. Just talking to you about this, you made me think of my kids. You know, I mean, I can't even tell you how many, and I can't call them vagrants, but, you know, but that's how we were too. We were a part of the youth group, and there was so many kids that would just sleep on my couch, end up, you know, there, and that were just latchkey kids, or, you know, parents forgot about them, or, you know, that type of thing. And I never thought about this until you said it, you know, how did my kids feel about all that, you know? And it just made me realize, you know, if you're going to adopt or you're thinking about adoption, you got to see how your family feels about it, your own kids, you know. When you don't talk about it and you don't talk about the elephant in the room, the elephant's going to sit on somebody. Yeah. And, you know, that, I mean, you know, type thing. And so when you said that to me the other day, I'm just going, man, I never looked at it that way. I never thought about, you know, your family being rearranged. Well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? I don't know. And that's really part of our selfish nature, not saying, well, I don't care whether you like it or not. We're just going to do it.
Right. Well, and for us, you know, we made the decision as a family to add Saya to the family. But then it was walking out the reality of that decision. And just because you've made a decision and this is how it's going to be, doesn't mean, oh, everything's going to be great. We're just going to move forward and it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's it's an adjustment.
Yeah. I mean, I still have one of my adopted kids tells me all the time, oh, I see y'all took family pictures without me. Well, we didn't. We just were all at the same place at the same time, and you weren't there because but that's not how they see things. So
Right.
it's an ongoing process that, working through all those little issues like that,
Yeah.
and you forget to call one. And, all my kids are grown up and not in the house, but, and the 3 adopted have not really, one does call me mom, the other 2 don't, but at the same time they know that I'm there to be their mom, not try to take the place of their mom, but be their mom. And both of the other 2, or all 3 of them, their moms are not in their life.
Okay.
So at the same time I have this struggling issue of, do I interject myself? Do I just sit back and wait for you? Type thing. And that's the thing that I'm sure you're figuring out too.
You're learning the dance of the relationship.
I like that.
Now, when you raise your kids,
Yeah.
you learn how to dance pretty well together.
Mhm.
But when it's
a new
person,
partner.
new partner, they don't know the steps. You don't know the steps. You don't even know what the dance is supposed to look like.
Right.
So it really is a process.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like dance roulette. Which song are we going to land on? Let's go.
Yeah.
The mamba or what is it? All the different dances,
Right.
the waltz. Which dance am I doing today? Because I don't know. But at the same time, you have to have a balance that isn't tiptoeing around the situations. And that's what I like.
Ballet.
Yeah.
We're not doing ballet.
No, because all of our toes would hurt at the end.
Yes.
But just saying that, I think that was such a revelation that you gave me is, were you just that selfish, Mia, that you didn't talk to your kids about it? And I think maybe we did talk about it. We didn't really know about the adoption process. And none of them, again, like I said, were real adoptions. They were all just like, hey, come in our tribe, be a part of the big blue house. Because if you didn't live in the big blue house, then you hadn't been through living, because we've been through everything, no food, no water, no, whatever, living on a youth pastor budget. But I mean, just I thought that was such a revelation. And, knowing that one of our girls from our youth group and her husband have adopted too. That's allowed me to see some things that I didn't even see before. And it's so funny because I tell everybody now, my husband's only sister has become a foster mom.
Okay.
And she's like my age. And so for her to take on 2 itty bitty kids, it's a lot. I mean, she's different as an aunt versus a mom. And so to see her in this role, my heart just goes out for her, because I'm like, oh, it is different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes I snicker at it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, come here. Let me show you how to do it, or let me help you. But I made all of the family watch Instant Family. Have you seen that?
I have. I made the mistake of watching it on the plane. I think the guy sitting next to me, he just wasn't sure what to do.
This woman is crying and I don't know how to save her.
Sobbing. Yeah.
He was probably thinking, she's afraid to fly.
Yeah.
I better hold her hand and, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie. And I would say if you are either from an adopted family or you're trying to understand some of those things, to watch that movie, Instant Family. It really put a different perspective on taking in somebody into your own home and the stuff they deal with versus the stuff you'll deal with too. And I always go back to the beginning of the scene when they're in the bed and they're like, we can just give them back, nobody will know.
Right.
But once you cut, you can't cut back. Once you adopt, that's it. You sign the dotted line. It's like marriage. My husband used to say, there's no expiration date on this license.
No.
There's no expiration date on the adoption either. So
That's it. And, in that place of blending families where there's birth children as well as foster or adopted children, the dynamics of making sure that you're checking in with all the kids because...
as well as your spouse.
I mean, kids are going to be kids, so there's always going to be the game of who gets the attention. Yeah.
And that happens even when it's not adopted kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when you've got children that were raised in a different home, they have different tactics for their games.
Yeah.
And so their games come in and they don't know your rules and your games, and everybody's trying to play their own strategy, and sometimes that gets a little
Is it like Battleship?
Little interesting.
You sink
No,
my
it's like Battleship with chess.
Oh,
you know, it's like there's two
oh.
different games going on, and
Yeah.
but there's
You have the wrong pieces. Put those back.
and nobody wins.
Yeah.
Nobody wins.
Well, love wins, and that's the best thing of it all. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that again. Like I said, I think it was a selfish part on our part not to talk about it with our kids. And I'm glad that you said we addressed it as a family. We did it as a family. We talked about it. And whether it's one-on-one, we're still working it out, still dancing. I like that. So I'll have to remember that. I'll have to tell my friends that. Still dancing. Just remember that. Yep. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about it. And maybe if somebody's out there that, needs something like that, look up definitely Instant Family, but also look into, I'm sure the internet has some things about adoption and,
Yeah, every state has resources and agencies, and there's people out there, advocates that you can talk to.
Advocates, that's the word I was looking for. See, I knew you're smart. All right. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Check us out and follow us. And again, Miss Valarie Smith from Tucson, thank you for coming, and maybe we'll see each other soon.
Hope so.
All right. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Riverside Weekly. This podcast is made possible by the givers of Riverside Community Church. Download the Riverside Waco app to stay connected and follow us on all social media sites at the Riverside Waco. Production and engineering provided by Capital G and RTV in Waco, Texas.